In a luxurious restaurant, a black teenager was humiliated and thrown out, with no one suspecting that he was the owner's son. What happened next changed everything, but let's start from the beginning. The luxurious restaurant, Amour Gastronomique, buzzed softly with the clinking of glasses and the hushed conversations of affluent patrons. Elliot Williams, a 17-year-old black teenager, walked through the doors with quiet composure. His casual attire, jeans and a plain t-shirt, stood in stark contrast to the tailored suits and glamorous outfits of the diners. Choosing a table by the window, Elliot sat down discreetly, drawing little attention to himself. A few minutes later, a waitress approached him. Monica, a striking young woman with a frosty demeanor, froze momentarily when she noticed him. Her eyes flicked over his outfit, and one brow arched slightly. "Excuse me, but this isn't a teen hangout," she remarked, standing over him. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" Elliot looked up at her, his face calm and unbothered. "Yes, I am. Could I have a menu, please?" Monica's dissatisfaction was evident. Crossing her arms, she let out a faint, mocking smile. "You know, we have a minimum charge of $200. I don't think you'll be staying long." Elliot, maintaining his composure, repeated, "The menu, please." Monica, seemingly convinced she was dealing with someone who had wandered in by mistake, glanced toward the manager standing by the counter. Speaking louder this time, she said, "Maybe you're looking for takeout? There's a place down the block that might be more suitable for you." The room quieted. Several pairs of eyes turned toward their table. Noticing the attention, the manager approached. However, instead of de-escalating the situation, he sided with Monica. "Sir," he began in a firm tone, "I'm afraid we'll have to ask you to leave. This isn't a place for unserious customers." Elliot finally set down the phone he had just pulled out moments earlier. His gaze met the manager's directly. "I'm simply waiting for the menu. Is that against the rules of your restaurant?" Monica smirked and shook her head dismissively. "You're kidding, right?" Elliot smiled faintly, his calm demeanor starting to unsettle those around him. "Are you sure you want to continue down this path? I don't think you understand who you're speaking to." The manager, sensing the growing tension, gave Monica a curt nod. "Please escort him to the door. We can't allow disruptions for our guests." Elliot rose from his seat but did not leave. Instead, he said, "Fine, give me a moment." He stepped aside and made a phone call. His steady voice and composed manner caused a ripple of unease among the staff. Guests at nearby tables began murmuring, their curiosity piqued. For some, it was starting to feel like this wasn't just a case of an out-of-place teenager. But no one was prepared for the twist this day had in store. Elliot returned to his table but remained standing. His eyes grew cold and focused, his earlier calm now replaced by quiet determination. Sliding his phone into his pocket, he spoke evenly. "All right, I'll wait." Monica let out an irritated huff and walked away, ignoring him as she hurried to tend to other tables. The manager lingered nearby, watching Elliot, clearly assessing how the situation might unfold. By now, many of the restaurant's patrons had turned their attention to the scene, their conversations fading into curious murmurs. A few minutes later, one of the regular patrons, an elderly man seated nearby, raised his hand to call Monica over. "Young lady," he asked, his tone tinged with concern, "what's going on here? Why are you treating that young man like this?" Feeling self-assured, Monica offered a tight, strained smile and replied, "We're simply maintaining our standards. I don't think he belongs here." Her words rippled through the restaurant, loud enough for others to hear. People exchanged glances, some whispering to each other, while a few patrons began pulling out their phones to record what was happening. Elliot said nothing, his composure unshaken, but his confident posture and unwavering silence only deepened the unease among the staff. The manager stepped closer to him, leaning down slightly to speak in a lower, more forceful tone. "Listen, kid, if you're not ordering, you need to leave. We can't have anyone disrupting the restaurant's atmosphere." Elliot's calm gaze met his. "Are you sure you want to say that to me?" The manager faltered for a moment, but pushed on, trying to maintain authority. "There's no discussion here. If you don't leave, I'll have security remove you." At that moment, the restaurant's doors opened. A tall man in a sharp, immaculate suit strode into the dining hall, his confident steps and stern expression commanding immediate attention. It was Mr. Williams, Elliot's father and the owner of the Amour Gastronomique restaurant chain. He didn't head straight for Elliot. Instead, he stopped at the host's stand, his eyes scanning the room with a steely intensity. The manager noticed him immediately and went rigid. "Mr. Williams, good evening," he stammered, his tone a mix of forced cheerfulness and unease. "What brings you here tonight?" Mr. Williams fixed him with a cold, assessing look. "A problem with the service," he replied curtly. Monica froze, her confident demeanor evaporating as she sensed the situation spiraling out of control. She hadn't imagined that the teenager in cheap clothes could possibly be connected to someone of such stature. Elliot turned to face his father, his voice clear and deliberate. "Glad you're here, Dad. They refused to serve me." The room fell into an eerie, suffocating silence. Every guest, staff member, and onlooker realized, with dawning horror, the gravity of the mistake they had made. The silence in the restaurant was deafening. The manager stood frozen, his face pale. Monica glanced around in confusion, her confidence dissolving like mist. Mr. Williams calmly walked past the tables and stopped beside his son. "Elliot," he said, his voice low but firm. "Tell me what happened here." Elliot met his father's gaze. "I wanted to sit down, look at the menu and order something. But apparently, my appearance raised doubts among your staff. They decided I wasn't worthy of being here." Mr. Williams turned to the manager, his expression unreadable. "Is this true?" The manager stammered, his words tumbling over each other. "Mr. Williams, you must understand, this is a misunderstanding. We didn't realize—" "You didn't realize he's my son." Mr. Williams' voice was as cold as ice. "But does that even matter? Every customer should be valued, regardless of their appearance. Am I mistaken?" Monica, who had remained silent until now, finally spoke up, her voice shaky but defensive. "I'm sorry, sir, but he looked inappropriate for our restaurant. We were trying to protect the establishment's image." "Protect the image?" Mr. Williams frowned, his expression hardening. "Do you think your job is to humiliate customers, or is that part of your so-called standards?" The patrons, who had been quietly observing, began murmuring among themselves. A few were recording the scene on their phones. The tension in the room was palpable. Monica, in a final desperate attempt to justify herself, said, "We're just following the rules. We have to maintain our level." Mr. Williams stepped closer, his tone now sharp and unyielding. "Level? Let me tell you what defines a true standard. It's measured by respect, professionalism, and hospitality, not by your prejudice. You clearly have no understanding of what my standards are." He turned to address the room, his voice resonating clearly across the hall. "This establishment was created so that everyone, no matter their skin color, age, or background, could feel valued. If my staff cannot uphold that principle, then I've made the wrong choice in hiring them." Monica opened her mouth to protest, but Mr. Williams silenced her with a single gesture. "You should pack your things. You no longer work here." A collective gasp rippled through the restaurant. Monica, her face drained of color, stumbled toward the exit. The manager began to stammer out an excuse, but Mr. Williams cut him off with a cold glare. "You as well. You had a chance to fix this situation, but you chose to support the humiliation of a customer." Under the stunned gaze of the patrons, both employees left the restaurant. Mr. Williams turned back to Elliot, his expression softening. "Thank you for letting me know. I promise, we'll make things right." Elliot nodded, his voice steady. "I hope so. Because this place isn't just a business. It should reflect what we truly stand for." After Monica and the manager left, Mr. Williams addressed the patrons. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "I sincerely apologize for what you witnessed today. This behavior is unacceptable. Our goal is to be a place where everyone is treated with respect, without exception." The room applauded, and Elliot quietly observed as his father took control of the situation. Later that evening, Mr. Williams gathered the staff. "From tomorrow, we will begin mandatory training on respect, inclusion, and professionalism. If you cannot align with these values, this is not the place for you." The next day, he posted an open letter on the restaurant's social media, recounting the incident and the lessons learned. While it sparked mixed reactions, many praised his honesty. A few days later, during dinner at home, Elliot told his father, "You did the right thing, Dad, but this is just the beginning." "I know," Mr. Williams replied. "This restaurant is part of our legacy, and it must stand for our values." In the weeks that followed, a new manager fostered a more inclusive environment, and both customers and staff noticed the changes. The video of the incident went viral, with many supporting Elliot and his father's efforts for justice. Elliot watched with pride, knowing they had turned a moment of prejudice into a catalyst for meaningful change.